Hello there, my name's Jenny Blair and I am a full-time artist and designer, and over on my blog I've been holding a spring sewing project where over the course of 6 weeks I'm sharing an embroidery design and a sewing technique. And this week I'm sharing freehand machine sewing, and I thought rather than taking lots of photographs it would be much easier to just video this sort of process. So here we are. What I'm going to share with you is pretty much the technique that I use to create stitched textile pieces. You might have seen before I've got a button on the sidebar of my blog, Stitched Textiles. If you want to go and have a look you can see some of my pieces there. And yeah, so let's get started. So I often get asked about my sewing machine and which type do I use and is it fancy, and the answer to that is no, definitely not fancy. This is just a very run-of-the-mill machine that I picked up probably about 10 years ago. This is Jeannie my Machine, very geniusly named after the make, Toyota Jeans. And yeah, she has been well loved and very well used. And it comes with paint splats, and you'll notice here the setup that I have is just your regular normal setup. All I've done is lowered the feed dog here, and that allows the material to move freely around, and so I will use the foot up and down, and I will just use the same needle, and I don't need to use an embroidery hoop. So it's worth having a little look at your own machine and seeing if you can lower the feed dog. Usually the instructions are in the booklet that you get with the machine. That'll tell you how to do that. And you're pretty much good to go. So go and have a wee try and see if you can use what you have already. Okay? So I have some examples here of work that I've created through Stitch. And you'll notice that it's fairly detailed, and it also incorporates fabric into the design as well. Either the full design is fabric or just some parts of it. There's a wee owl. So here you can see I've got a girl under a glitter ball, and yeah, she's got a fabric dress, but the rest of her is just stitched outline. And so for the likes of this, and you can see the hummingbird in the background, I need a template. There's no way I could just, you know, walk up to a machine and start sewing this without some sort of drawn line to follow or some template. So that's what I'm going to show you, and I'm going to use, for the sake of demonstration purposes, I've got here this week's embroidery design, and I'm going to show you the steps that I would take to turn this into a stitched creation. So it's quite a simple design, there's not too many details, so that's good. It's a good starting point for someone who's never done it before. Okay, so my plan is I'm going to machine sew the branch and the birdie. So thinking about it, I'll need one colour for the branch, and that's going to be sewn first because it's at the bottom. And then I've got the bird. Now I want to have a couple of different colours in the bird. So you can see how the body's split up. I'm going to have a bottom half of the body and the tail one colour, and I'm going to do the wings another colour. For the head I'm just going to stitch the outline, and I think that will create a nice contrast. So thinking about the layers, I would want to do the tail first and the bottom half of the body first, and I'll leave the wings to the last bit, and that's going to be the top layer out of the layers. So you can see here I've got the two templates. I've cut out the bird and the branch, and I've also cut out some bits of fabric. I've drawn around the template, just using fabric pen, and we're good to start sewing. You don't need quite as big bit of fabric as that, but yeah, you do want it to be bigger than the template, and then you trim it once you've sewn it on. So let's start sewing. Okay, so you can see here I've got my dark branch fabric. I'm using a pale white thread just as a contrast, and I've got it pinned in place, and I'm all ready to start sewing. There we have it. Here we have some tree barky design, and I'm going to cut off all this excess fabric. Okay, so I'm now ready to stitch the lower part of the bird. I've got, you can see the blue line that I've drawn ready to stitch, and I've now got brown thread in, which obviously contrasts against the pale fabric. So here you can see I've trimmed the bottom part of the bird, and we're ready to put on the second layer, which is the wings. So all I've done is simply cut the head and the tail off, and this gives you the template for the wings. So they'll go in there. So that's the shape that I've drawn round on this bit of fabric, and I've drawn in the little wing details, and I'll get ready to pin that on there. And I think I might trim that a bit smaller just so I can match up the outlines. And a good tip for making sure it is lined up properly is placing this part back on and then lining up your drawn lines with that. Okay. So here we have the wings pinned on, and I've made sure that I've lined up the drawn line with the stitched line underneath. I'm ready to sew. You can go fast or slow. I usually go slow at this point so that I can make sure it will sit in the right place. I'll cut the threads at the end of this. See, my fabric's kind of moved over, so I'm just going to sort of line up my stitches. And then I'm going to do the neck bit. Here I have the fabric trimmed off and the threads cut, and I've drawn around the birdie head, and I've just drawn in the wee detail as well. What I'm going to do is just sew with the machine the outline, and I'm going to leave it blank, just using the background fabric. So here we have the finished birdie, a wee bit on the shabby side, but I think he looks quite cute. I did try and video the head sewing, but my fingers got in the way, so lesson learned there. So I'm going to finish off this embroidery design by, you'll notice there's some flowers and leaves and swirls to sew, so I'm going to do them by hand, but if you're having fun, by all means carry on with the machine sewing. And you could fill in the head if you wanted to. You could machine sew, you could paint it even, hand embroider. The choice is yours indeed. So there you have it. So I hope it's been of some use, and that you've managed to pick up something new, and that you've now got the urge to go and create some stitch wonders of your own.